Hi, Dr. Dave Webster. This is part of my ongoing video blog and so on, and on the internet, social media stuff about the travesty of patient access to PET-CT in our Liberal government's so-called evidence-based, patients-first healthcare system in Ontario. And the topic of this blog will be simply an update since my last post, which was December 24th, and hopefully everyone had a good Christmas and follow. But now it's the time, hopefully, to get back to work. We do have an election coming, and time will be critical for us to make changes in Ontario. And a little notice, however, as you watch this video and all my internet posts, you need to now know that this video and all of my internet posts and activity are being and have been monitored by the following groups. The Liberal Party, Ms. Kathleen Wynne, our Premier. The person standing behind her is Mr. Glenn Thibeault. He's my Sudbury MPP, and he is the Liberal Golden Boy, their hope for the future of the party. And Mr. Glenn Thibeault, I will assure you, knows every last detail about what's going on in this province, in spite of the statements he's making in the media. Our Minister of Health, Dr. Hoskins, of course, and, as you know, Cancer Care Ontario, and now, sadly, but as you will realize, not surprisingly, by the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario, my licensing body in this province. Now, what you need to understand is by sharing this information on the internet, which is based on facts and documents to the best of my knowledge, by sharing this with my physician colleagues, patients, and you, the public, they are threatening to take away my medical privileges to practice medicine in Ontario. So I mentioned previously that I had instigated an investigation on behalf of a couple of cancer patients to Ms. Christine Elliott, the patient ombudsman. She first became aware of this in April 2017. She's finally made a ruling, and I have a lot to say about that ruling. But if you've not already seen my video blog entitled The CCO-Mandated Assault on a Patient, I'll call Carol, the short version, and the other videos I've got there, you might want to review them or view them for the first time, if not after you see this. And as you go through this, and I will go through that in very much detail on different blogs about Ms. Elliott, I want you to decide whether she is a watchdog on behalf of the patients against possible government abuse, or whether she is Ms. Wynne and Dr. Hoskins' lapdog. Now, the facts are this, is that a patient, again, I'll call Carol, I was one of her physicians, and we were forced to stage her cervical cancer and plan her therapy only on CT and also in our studies. That was very much against her opinion. She should have had a PET-CT, which she was not allowed. If she had been in Quebec, for example, she would have had one. But based on what we were forced to stage and so on, she was told she was curable by her surgeon in McMaster, and she underwent radical radiation therapy to her pelvis. Now, unfortunately, she only had her PET-CT allowed after the therapy, and it in fact correctly showed that she was stage 4 terminal cervical cancer from day one. Yet based on her CCO standard of care guidelines we were forced as her physician to follow, this led to her having an absolutely contraindicated therapy. No one with stage 4 cancer ever should have had this therapy. But of course she did. But as a result, sadly, Carol died in hospital after many months, and she was 6 months after she got the PET scan, she died. And she suffered terribly in the hospital. I saw her several times. In large part, these were side effects from the radiation therapy, and she had terrible pain and other issues, and in part largely related to her receiving this contraindicated therapy. Now, but remember, it was my advocacy for this and another patient that led to threats against me by the senior executive of Cancer Care Ontario. These are not pictures from Carol, but this is the kind of damage she suffered. This would have been radiation damage to her bladder, her colon, and because of the radiation damage and scarring in her pelvis, she had swelling and subsequent, as you can see, problems with swelling and ulcers and all sorts of things on her extremities. And this is, of course, an example, a prime example of what Ms. Wynne and Dr. Hoskins mean by putting patients first. So, Ms. Elliott's ruling, one, all aspects of Carol's care either met the standards of the Excellent Care for All Act of 2010, which defines her mandate, or they were not part of her mandate and thus of no concern to either Ms. Elliott nor her boss, in fact, the Ombudsman of Ontario, Mr. Paul Dubé. Secondly, the College of Physicians and Surgeons at CPSO has finally made clear the basis of the registrars initiating an investigation into my conduct, and I am supposed to respond sometime in February of 2018. This is their website, but what I want you to pay particular attention to their vision about quality professionals. In other words, protect you patients from bad doctors, which they are seeing me as, to make sure we have a healthy system, and above all, that the public can trust their work. Now, the facts of this is that in September of 2018, we've got an election coming, right? I received a registered letter from the registrar of the College of Physicians and Surgeons that I would have my work, my interpretation of scans and so on, investigated both in Sudbury and Thunder Bay, and they were going to be reviewed. And so it wasn't clear whether that was because people had complained about my work and my reports or whatever, or was it about my advocacy for PET in Ontario. And in fact, it is entirely about my advocacy for you, the patients of Ontario, for PET, and the main complainant is, guess who? Cancer Care Ontario, the body entrusted with making all the critical decisions about your health care, particularly with your cancer. So the facts continued is that none of Ms. Wynn's medical experts that I have ever asked to respond to questions, and these questions didn't really originate from me, I'm simply the messenger, but these are questions and concerns raised by true Canadian and international PET experts. But without exception, they have never challenged the statements that I have made, nor have they ever provided any documents to counter my statements, but most importantly, they've never provided any documents to verify or justify the basis on which they make these critical decisions about your health care, and in particular, access to PET in Ontario. The point is, I am just not allowed to share these facts and documents with my colleagues, patients, or you, the public, and I will not be surprised if the government tries to shut my internet activity down. But another thing I want you to make clear, and I will understand, and I will make this clear in several posts about the College of Physicians and Surgeons, but they have in fact for a number of years been aware of all the issues I'm sharing with you, including they have a copy of the 2005 Canadian Association of Nuclear Medicine motions, which declared the CCO trials on cancer patients as being unethical. Yet remember, the registrar is investigating me, not the physicians, that the world has condemned since 2005 in the medical literature. So other activities, I've been preparing documents and communicating with Mr. Jeff Urich, the PC health critic. I've drafted a series of questions to the legal counsel for the Patient Ombudsman of Ontario regarding Miss Elliott's ruling, and if she responds, which is unlikely, but I will share her response and to the answer to those questions with you. I've sent a second registered letter to Ontario's Ombudsman, Mr. Dubé, asking that he finally respond to the review I'd asked him to perform related to the handling of PET by his predecessor, Mr. Andre Moran. I've actually registered another complaint with Mr. Dubé regarding the fact that Dr. Hoskins and the CCO medical experts have refused to acknowledge or answer questions directed to them by Ontario cancer patients. Now, what kind of questions might they be? Well, here's an important one. I think you'll agree. Since the government medical experts all agree that how they will make decisions as to whether or not these patients would be allowed to have a PET CT scan is not in fact based on a scientifically validated basis. On what basis will they make the decisions? This question was not acknowledged nor responded to, but by me demanding that the government officials or CCO experts answer this question, that led to the threats against me. So anyone think this would not be a reasonable question for you to ask these government experts and get an answer to? So my next post will be my message to CPSO and CCO, and I'm going to have to make a lot of posts now because we've got an election coming. I've got to respond to the college who's investigating me for doing the very activity I'm doing right now, and they will be viewing this video, remember, so that we can bring about some change. It's not going to happen without us, and I can assure you that Ontario's journalists will not touch this issue unless forced to do so, and who doesn't know that as a fact as well in the age of agenda-driven news. So thanks, and please share this with as many people as you can. Ontario cancer patients desperately need your help. So see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.